All right, everyone, continuing with the notes for Chapter 8, starting with Section 6 of your notes on this particular video, talking about what might happen if a local broadcast station were to refuse to run a particular network program. Here's some reasons an affiliate may preempt that particular show. That's the term meaning that they decide not to air a particular program. Could include any of these reasons on the screen. A local news emergency that requires live on-the-scene coverage. Perhaps the decision to air a locally produced program like a parade in town or a news special or a local sports team. Perhaps the local broadcast station deems the content of a particular program to be inappropriate for its market and for its viewers. Or it could just be a completely selfish reason. They want to keep the advertising time and the revenue for themselves, because keep in mind, network programming comes with it that they maintain 3/4 of the advertising time within a show. And perhaps a station can do better by selling all the time itself with its own content. An affiliate may reschedule the program for another time period, which would be called delayed coverage. So instead of airing it at the day and time the network would like it to air, they air it at some other time. They can do that, but if they do so, they might lose some of the network comp that they would receive from the network. If the affiliate refuses to clear a program, in other words, they decide not to air it, they preempt it, the network can offer that particular show to another station in the market. Affiliates negotiate in advance for the right to preempt a limited number of programs during the year. One reason affiliates may preempt network programming is choosing to offer programs that are more in the public interest for its audience, rather than running repeats of a network show, for example. And that can be a very important thing to show to the FCC that you are indeed trying to follow that keeping in the local interest standard that they require. One of the best ways to maintain content that is in the local interest is to provide news and other types of local programming. Now, in addition to the obvious community benefits of having news content on the air, local news programming serves the broadcaster's commercial objectives quite well in the following ways, and there's a list of them here. First one would be risk mitigation. And basically what we're talking about here is that when a local station decides to produce a newscast, they are assuming all the risk associated with the content and the ratings and everything else about the show. It is not dependent on the popularity or any sort of controversy that may develop around a particular program that they pick up from a syndicator or air from a network. If there are problems with a particular program they're doing, they own the show. They can make changes to the show. They can swap out talent. They can change the format of how the news is done and reported, and the different means that they use to do that in order to be able to produce a good product that will get them ratings and ultimately advertising dollars. Also, exclusivity of product. No one else can air the newscast or use their branding or their talent. The way that Channel 5 does news, only Channel 5 can do that. They've copyrighted it. It is their material. It is their content. Same with Channel 17. Same with Channel 11. Brand building. The newscast content and production values can be styled so as to match the station's desired market identity, and that's based on its programming and its community exposure. It is very much in the interest of local television stations to brand their news product in such a way, because many times the reputation of the station as a whole is very closely tied to the reputation of its news product. Channel 5 with WRAL News, they brand their news as coverage you can count on. Channel 17, WNCN, They broadcast CBS 17 news as local news that matters. And they try to instill that sort of reputation, not just with their slogans, but with the format of the news, the way they present reports, the way they do storytelling, the types of stories that they cover. All of that is part of brand building. Associations with their websites and apps, and all of that comes into play. Customization of product. The station can alter its newscast content and format. That's a part of the brand building process. Cost containment, another benefit that local television stations will see as attractive in producing their own local news. Startup costs might be high, but those startup costs and the ongoing costs as well can be accurately estimated and budgeted. So it's something that they have that are more hard and fixed numbers than the negotiation process that may go on with obtaining syndicated content. Revenue enhancement. The station owns all commercial inventory. They can also change the number of avails. Maybe it's a light news day. They can slip in another minute of avails. Maybe they're doing some extensive news coverage, or they haven't sold out all of their advertising packages for a particular day, so they can do an elongated newscast with less commercials. It's all up to them. Newscasts are usually not hit listed by advertisers. In other words, it's a fairly safe thing for advertisers to advertise on a newscast. They don't see it as controversial as other types of programming and don't tend to raise as many objections unless they see the reputation of the station doing news as a bad one. And advertisers regard news as the most prestigious category of television programming. So to be associated with advertising on a newscast is to be kind of seen as aligning your reputation with the reputation of the news on that particular station, and to try to get as many people to view your advertisement by airing it in the newscast, because a lot of people do tune in for the news of their local area. Almost half of all station revenue is generated during news programs. Again, they control the inventory, so they own all of that commercial airtime, and they get all the money for that commercial airtime. And stations use news to strengthen their brands and turn a profit. Again, it has to do with the reputation not just of the news product, but the station as a whole. Now, in terms of other local programming, there's two basic categories that we look at outside of news. There would be different regularly scheduled shows like public affairs programming, different weekend sports wrap-ups in the fall when high school football is going on. Some stations will do a special broadcast about that, or at the end of the weekend, kind of do a weekend sports wrap-up sort of broadcast. Those things are pretty popular. Also, special events like ball games and parades and other local things of interest that a local television station may cover. Local programs no longer drive the financial or programming goals of a station. Kind of a sad thing here, but depending on the type of local content, quite honestly, there's not necessarily a large audience for that sort of thing. So those things, unless there is a real draw to it in the community, tend not to get a lot of airplay on a television station. For group-owned stations, I should say, local production can be a laboratory, can be a means of field testing programming before a launch in syndication. Many talk shows have done this. For example, Oprah Winfrey started out as a local talk show in the Chicago area before she went national. There's also, these days, a show that covers court proceedings in Providence, Rhode Island, and that started off as a local show in New England, caught in Providence, and it picked up notoriety and now is seen across the country. All right, let's talk now about syndicated programming and something that once upon a time was a thing, the Primetime Access Rule, or PTAR. This happened in 1970. What happened was the FCC put out a ruling that said only 3 hours of primetime television per night could be aired by any local broadcast station. So prior to this ruling, primetime was actually from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., 7 nights a week. So with this ruling, it said, well, you've got 4 hours there, pick 3. And what happened as a result was that the 7 to 8 p.m. hour wound up being the hour that was given back to the local affiliates, and this was dubbed as prime access time. Now, the idea here was that local TV stations would be able to air more local content because, again, the FCC is interested in shows that cater to the local public interest. But what wound up happening was that local stations started running syndicated programs, so long as they weren't of the off-network variety, in what was formerly primetime territory. So they were able to keep extra advertising inventory and revenue and attract people to watch these different shows that were available in syndication. PTAR was repealed in 1995, but we still have that idea that prime access is owned by the local affiliates for that 7 o'clock hour, and they still, for the most part, tend to run different types of syndicated programming. Off-network syndication, there is no inherent value to any given television program. So it's not something that has a hard fixed value to it that a show is worth X dollars. Ultimately, the market value of a program is set by the price at which the buyer's offer price and the seller's acceptance price overlap. So every show on every station in every market that is syndicated goes through a price negotiation process. It's possible that a television station paying for a particular show in Raleigh is going to pay something different than someone that runs it in Richmond versus someone that runs it in Philadelphia, and on and on and on. So the price, there's not, the sticker price is the only price kind of thing. It's always a negotiation. The syndicator sells the exclusive rights to air a program in one of two ways. And it can be this first method, the weekly license. This would be the case where a show is generally fed to a station by means of satellite, because it's largely these are going to be shows that tend to be kind of time specific, like a news magazine type show or something where it doesn't make practical sense to rerun a particular broadcast, I should say, because of the nature of the content of the program. Barter advertising generally included in this sort of arrangement. Stations have no say as to scheduling of individual episodes, again, because the shows are time specific. So you get the show, this is the show for this Wednesday, and that's your option to air. And the shows must agree to air that show once a day. So that's what's covered in a weekly license. The other type of agreement is a per episode agreement. Stations enjoy more control over scheduling the program. Generally, no barter is involved, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. And as long as the syndicator gets paid, it really doesn't care how the station airs the show. It might be set for a particular time, and if they make a significant change to the time of the show, well, there's going to be differences in what they would pay per episode. But by and large, as long as the station pays, they can pretty much do with the particular episodes and run them in whatever particular order that they decide to do so. The shows aren't time specific, so that's not as big of a deal. So it's left to the discretion of the local broadcast station as to what order the different individual programs air. When a program is sold into off-network syndication, it enters the marketplace upwards of 2 years before its actual syndication date on the air. So if you were to take a show that, let's take this fall season right now, and let's say there's a show that is coming up that everyone thinks is going to be a huge success and is going to last for years and years and years and years and years. So the show starts off in the 2020-2021 season. So in this example, we're looking at most likely a show beginning its syndication in its 5th year of network production. So after 4 seasons have been completed, about 90 episodes or so. So that's going to give enough content for a station to be able to syndicate that show if they want to do it, especially on a Monday through Friday sort of basis. So the negotiation starts 2 years before that happens. So right around the end of season 3. Then you have season 4, and then in the 5th year, a television station can start running the syndicated content. But those agreements are drawn up a couple years prior to the show actually being released for syndication. While a program is still on the network, the station benefits in 3 ways from having the syndicated version. So let's take an example that's current right now. NCIS New Orleans is currently in syndication, but it's also still running original episodes on CBS. This would be a prime example. So some benefits to the local television station that's running it in syndication would be national exposure, where a network has previously spent heavily to promote the show as a hit and still actually does. New episodes, shows newer to syndication are underexposed as each completed season gets added to the syndication queue. And you have advertiser access. Advertisers can predict results with popular network shows, but then they pay lower rates to advertise with the syndicated version of the show as opposed to paying the huge dollars to a national audience with a network, or even with the local cut-ins for advertising. Those are going to command much higher rates for that new content as opposed to the reruns in syndication. Now, here's some benefits of an off-network syndication program to a station. The station is able to keep most, if not all, of the commercial time within a show because even if there's a barter arrangement, you're talking about a minute of commercial inventory or 2 minutes of commercial inventory when you get to keep the rest and sell that off. More money for the local station. Brand building. The show can help the station to develop a particular identity in the minds of the local audience. And cater to local tastes. Syndication makes available programs that might be a better fit for regional or market tastes than do network programming. And because there's not that network loyalty with syndication, you can find a show that aired on a different network previously or may still be running on a different network than yours, but it's available for syndication and your station can pick it up for the syndicated run. There's also risks, though, with picking up a syndicated show for a station. A couple things to consider. When an individual station commits to licensing a syndicated program, it bears the entire financial risk of that decision. It's not being carried as well by a network. You, as the local station, are taking a risk and investing your money as an expense to pay for that particular syndicated show. And if it succeeds, great. If it doesn't succeed, you lose money. Also, the absence of exclusivity. Now, it's exclusive as long as you're under contract for that syndicated show. But once a contract period is over, a syndicator can move that program to another station, lickety-split. That happened recently with Ellen in the local market. I believe it was on Channel 5 a couple years ago, and then once the agreement was over there, it moved to Channel 17. I think I have that correct. I might be wrong, but it did change from one station to another here in Raleigh in the past couple of years. Now, as far as movies, it's highly unusual today to discover a movie on local television that one has not had many opportunities to see elsewhere. Movies tend to be now an economy of scale sort of choice. And as a matter of fact, you don't see a lot of movies on broadcast TV anymore unless, honestly, they're just trying to fill time. To get a movie for syndication can be a rather expensive sort of ordeal unless it is an older show. And there's all sorts of different types of content that are out there that are shorter in length that may be a little more attractive to take a risk on from the local station perspective. One of those types of shorter shows that you are seeing more and more on television is the ever-loved infomercial. Why do stations air infomercials? Well, a few reasons. Infomercials are usually paid for in advance. In other words, they make the agreement with the local broadcast station. The infomercial producer pays the station before the broadcast makes it to air. Stations love that. It also provides quick cash for stations as a result. They may not get a ton of money for it compared to what they might get for advertising revenue with a popular show, but it's, again, a sure thing, paid in advance. It's also attractive to stations for low ratings day parts or for running against mega telecasts on other stations. If you are the station that this particular year is not running the Super Bowl, then you're not going to try to put your best programming on against the Super Bowl. You're either going to burn off programs that you need to burn off for one reason or another, or if you get the opportunity, throw an infomercial on, make a few bucks for the station. The success of an infomercial depends not on its rating, but on the so-called response rate. In other words, it's dependent on the number of persons who call the number on the screen or go to the website and sign up for a service or order the merchandise that the infomercial is touting. Infomercials are proof indeed that television continues to be the world's most influential advertising medium. Infomercials are made fun of. Infomercials are scoffed at. People groan at the idea of infomercials, but they're around because people actually sit and watch them. And not only do they watch them, some people even buy the things that are on the infomercial. So they exist because they're effective at what they're trying to do. So there you go. And here we go. Taking a little break. We'll finish up this chapter with part C of chapter 8. So I'll see you over there.